Okay, well, welcome everybody to Coffee and Kabbalah Chanukah edition. I'll take these off in a minute if they're really distracting, but we're all geared up for Chanukah. Tonight is the first night of Chanukah, and we are in the best place to celebrate Chanukah in Efrat, in formerly known Papa Melech, now Efrat Food Court. Welcome to all the amazing ladies. Today's shiur, thank you for joining us, and if you're watching this, thank you, it means the world. Today's shiur is sponsored by my two amazing friends, Ilana Singer, Le'ilei Nishmat, her father, Arav Zev Nehemiah Przansky, his Neshama Halevi, his Neshama should have an Aliyah. His yahrzeit was on Yudchet Kislev, and his birthday is on the third night of Chanukah, and we're learning B for his blessing. And we are also, shiur is also sponsored on these amazing donuts by Papa Melech. I forgot to say why this is the best place. This is the best, probably one of the best donuts in Israel, if not the best. And we are eating our donuts in honor of Roe Weiser, who loved donuts all year long, especially Hanukkah was his favorite chag. And my dear friend Rini, thank you for sponsoring, for thanking Hashem for the miracle of Alan's health, and he should continue to have health and strength and get better and have Yeshua and miracles and no more monkey business. Just good stuff. All right, thank you everyone for being here. So today's class is called Light Up Your Soul. Chanukah is for sure my favorite chag. I think I was Yotze, like whole Rebbetzin. Now we could focus. Okay, so throughout today's class, we want to get to the place, hopefully, where Hashem will help us increase our inner flame to be a full blazing menorah, to light up all the darkest corners of the world. So Chanukah in a nutshell, if you wanted to summarize, what is it as essence? According to Chassidut, it is the triumph of light over dark. And we're going to raise your hand to a quote if you like sources in text or sources out of text. In text, raise your hand. Out of text? Okay, so we'll do a combination. Okay, so we'll begin with the Gemara has the same question. They say, what is Hanukkah all about, right? There's so many parts and customs of Hanukkah. There's the one main mitzvah of Hanukkah, which is lighting the menorah. Everything else is just amazing customs centered on oil and oily foods and spinning dreidel and having a great time. But the Gemara, we'll start with the Gemara question. The Gemara discusses, we want to get to the core of what is the essence of Hanukkah. So this tractate in Talmud is called, in Masechah Shabbos is called Mai Hanukkah. Tanu Rabbanan, mitzvahs Chanukah. What is the mitzvah of Chanukah? Ner ishu beso. So the basic mitzvah of Chanukah from the Gemara is only one candle lit by one person in the house, each night of Chanukah. Right? How lame would that be if we did that? No menorahs. Umahadrin, and the better, mahadrin means right the higher level. Ner l'kol echad ve'echad. Every person in the house lights one candle each night of Chanukah. Mahadrin mina mahadrin, the best of the best, right? Now we know where the hechsher terms come from. Beis Shammai. So now there's a machlokas. There's two schools. We're talking about the Tanaim. So there's two stages in the Mishnah. We have the Tanaim. So we have Hillel and Shammai, and then we have the Gemara that's then going to discuss and debate what Hillel and Shammai meant. So we have Hillel and Shammai. Shammai says, what is the Mahadrin and Mahadrin? We might be familiar with this. Yom Rishon Madlik Shmona. The first day you light 8 candles. Mikan ve'elech poches v'holech. From here on, you decrease one every day. And the last day you light 1 candle. Ubeis Hillel Omer, and Beis Hillel says Yom Rishon Madlik Echaz. On the first day we light 1, and we come Elach Mosef Holach. And from there we move on. That's it. That's what we're left with. And we obviously do like Beis Hillel. I actually heard that that Chanukah is an acronym, could be an acronym for Ches Neros V'Halacha Kebeis Hillel. So that was. Now we come to now the Amoram come in. The next generation of scholars come in. They want to understand Hillel and Shammai weren't just like arguing for fun. They're not just saying what makes more sense. They are talking about the deepest ideas of what it means to light up darkness. So you want to understand where their source reasoning comes from. So Amar Ule said there's 2 Amoraim, Plige ba Trei Amorai. There's 2 Amoraim who in Bamarava in the west of Eretz Yisrael who disagreed with regards to the reasoning. With regards to the reasoning of where Hillel and Shammai were basing it on. Rabbi Yossi bar Avin, Rabbi Yossi bar Zavida. So 2 Rabbi Yossis had different opinions. Chad Amar, one of them said, this is where I underlined, Tama de Beis Shammai keneged Yaman Nechnasin. The reason for Beis Shammai saying to light 8 on the first day is because of how many days are left. And to explain, we say that the miracle is greatest on the first day because there's the power, the potential now, this oil has the potential now to light for 8 days. So it's this really great potential oil. And every day the potential gets smaller and smaller. So he says the miracle is greatest on the first day, and then you can keep decreasing. And according to this Rabbi Yossi, whichever one it is, he says, and what's Beis Hillel's reasoning according to that? Keneged Yemim hayotzin. Not for how many days there are left to the miracle, not how many days happen. So one day a miracle happened, light 1 candle. Oh, now we'll live for 2 days, light 2 candles. That's one Rabbi Yossi's opinion. The other Rabbi Yossi, V'chad Amar, the next Rabbi Yossi says, no, that's not where they based it on. And these are very deep ideas. We're going to get really deep with this. Tama de Beis Shammai, Keneged Parei HaChag. He says the reason for Beis Shammai is actually to correspond to the Parei HaChag. Parei are cows, Chag is Sukkot. So HaChag is just Sukkot. What does this mean? In the Beis Hamikdash, on Sukkot, they actually sacrificed 8 bulls on the first day, 7 the next day, 6 the next day, and decreased 1 every day. And that equaled, we'll get to why later. And he says, though, because we both have 8 days, right? So therefore, let's copy what we do, learn from Sukkot, and decrease every single day. We'll get to it's way deeper than that. We'll get to it soon. And he says, according to this Rabbi Yossi, how does Hillel answer that? But Talmai de Beis Hillel demailen b'kodesh ve'emaridin, right? Raise your hand if you've heard of this. Right? That's our classic. Demailen b'kodesh. Chabad uses this all the time, right? Whenever we have things in Kodesh, we always increase. When someone gives tzedakah, the Rebbe would say, I want you to give double next year, right? That's why we doubled our campaign goal this year. We always increase in acts of holiness. We never go back, right? If you take on a vow to be stronger in your Kedusha, you don't go back. And this all comes from Beis Hillel's reasoning. So he says, we can't take away light. We can't light 8 candles, then light less. In Kedusha, you have to increase in light. So we have to start with 1 and add so we can be somebody who increases, because that's what the essence of a Jew is. So that makes sense to us, right? Now we're going to get really deep into what they are really basing this on a much deeper way. Yay, we're here. Have some donuts or order somewhere. Okay, now to understand this, we're first going to take a step aside and just get to the core mitzvah, the core what we're celebrating on Chanukah. So let me see if we should go straight into your sources. We should have a break from sources. Okay, so now we go to the wait, do we have my Chanukah? Oh, in your sources, I brought you the messages, the menorah messages. Yay. Okay. So the Gemara, I didn't bring it down. I thought I did. Okay, so the Gemara says, I'll summarize for you. In my Chanukah, the Gemara says, what are we celebrating on Chanukah? It says that we didn't have enough oil to last 8 days, and they found a jug of oil, and it lasted for 8 days. In summary, and to commemorate that, we light the menorah. Now, there's a whole bunch of questions on this concept and what the core mitzvah of celebrating is. I'm going to go through the questions really quickly, and hopefully will stay with me. So we have a bunch of questions on the mitzvah of Chanukah. Number 1, in the Gemara, it says that the main thing we're celebrating is finding this jug of oil. The question on this is, we do very little to commemorate the much greater, seemingly greater miracle of winning the war, of the few against many. In fact, the question gets even stronger if you learn that let's go back. So first of all, why are we emphasizing in the Gemara that we're celebrating the oil by lighting the menorah, but we're not even doing any mitzvah to commemorate the real miracle, which was there wouldn't have been Jews left to light the menorah if Hashem hadn't done this crazy miracle to have a little group of rebels against a Greek army that had backups of legions of soldiers. So that was the real miracle. Why are we not celebrating that, mentioning that, talking about that more? We obviously talk about the story. Now, the next question is this. A lot of times, the Talmud says that the Greeks didn't smash the oil. A lot of times in movies and books about Hanukkah, you see that they smashed the oil. In fact, the history tells us they didn't actually break any oil. They actually systematically removed the seal of the Kohen Gadol off of every jug of oil to defile it, to make it impure. So what do they gain by defiling it, and why defile the oil? What's the significance of defiling the oil? Now we have another question. Going back to the question about why we're commemorating the miracle of oil, and everything we do is about oil and lighting the menorah over the bigger miracle, seemingly. The question gets even stronger when there's a halacha that when the majority of the Jewish community is tameh, it's called tumra, hutra, v'tzibur, we're allowed to light the menorah with impure oil. So we didn't even need that miracle because we could have lit the menorah anyways. So we would have been able to light the menorah, but if we hadn't survived the war, no one would have been able to light the menorah because we would have been wiped off the face of the earth. So why are we so caught up on this miracle of lasting 8 days when we could have actually lit the oil? And if we go a little deeper, we see that actually, and why did the Jews insist on lighting with pure olive oil if they were allowed to light with impure oil? A few more questions. If we're commemorating the nace of the miracle of the menorah and the Beit HaMikdash, how many branches did the menorah and the Beit HaMikdash have? 7. And how many do our menorahs have? 8. Right. That's was that either like a big commercial, like someone made the wrong? No. What's the reason? If we're trying to remember the Beit HaMikdash, why are we lighting 8 and not 7? Number 3, the Beis HaMikdash, they lit the menorah specifically during the daytime. It had to be lit an hour and a quarter before it got dark, but we light only after it gets dark. So again, why the discrepancy between trying to remember the miracle of the light in the Beis HaMikdash? Why are we specifically lighting only at dark? In fact, I brought you the source where the Gemara says that you have to wait until it's dark enough that the lowliest people came home from the shuk. That was Gemara. Yeah, of course. Of course, yeah. I usually dedicate all morning to all of the Chayalim and all of the Chatufim to their safe return. This is the first week I haven't in a year, so thank you for reminding me. Of course, our learning is always with our whole heart for the safe return of the Chayalim and all the soldiers and the fallen soldier from yesterday. Amen. Okay, so we have our bunch of questions. We want to know why we're commemorating the oil over the miracle of the war. Why are we lighting a menorah with 7 branches and not 8? Why did they even have to light with pure oil, insist on lighting with pure oil if they could have lit with impurity? Why did the Greeks care to impurify the oil? Why are we lighting at night if they lit during the day? And also the miracle, this is a side question, I'm going to put it in brackets. The miracle was 8 days. The first day wasn't a miracle because oil should last for 1 day. Why do we celebrate 8 days? In fact, there's 100 answers. The Mechaber, the Shulchan Aruch brings 3 of them. Most of them are like the first day was that they found the oil, the first day was that they won the war, or that even the first day that, I think that's the 3 that the Mechaber brings down, the first day that the oil had the potential already for being miraculous, etc. Okay, that was a brackets. Now we're going to get to answer all this. We really want to understand what the core of Hanukkah is, and to do that we're going to look at Al Hanisim. In your source, the Al Hanisim, who wants to sing it? Al Hanisim, Al Porkan, Al Gurot, Al Tshuvot, Al Milchamo, Salavotenu, Vayamim Ma'im Bazman Hazeh. Okay, Al Hanisim. Oh, I didn't bring a translation. Wish me luck. Okay, you guys will help me. What's Porkan? Thank you. Jor's a translator. For the miracles, for the release, for the gvuros, for the yeshuos that Hashem did for our fathers today, v'Chanukah. B'mei Matisyahu, in the times of Matisyahu, the Ben Yochanan, the Kohen Gadol, Chashmonai, the Hasmonim, Ubanav and his sons, Kish'amda Malchus, Yavan Harasha, Alam Yisrael, when the wicked Greeks stood up against us, Lehashkicham mitorasecha. This is the essence of what we're celebrating on Chanukah. Lehashkicham, to make us forget Torah Secha, and I underlined the words Torah Secha. V'lahavira michukei ritzonecha, and to make us forget the chukim of his ratzon. Here's where we go back into history. The Greeks, we have many enemies, right? Over the generations, we have tons of enemies. That's why we have so many holidays to celebrate, winning over them. There's enemies before Antiochus, like Paro, who wanted to fight our bodies, and like the Spanish Inquisition, who wanted to ruin, actually I don't know where they fall under the Holocaust, who didn't care about our soul. And then we have enemies that were fighting our soul. Antiochus was different than his predecessors like Paro and Haman, in that he didn't care to kill our Jews. In fact, Antiochus and the Greeks loved the Jewish nation so much, they were so enamored by how beautiful our culture was. The Torah was brilliant. They actually had no problem with us at all. They loved the Beis HaMikdash. They thought it was stunning. They wanted us to, in fact, they even thought the Torah was genius. What they had a problem with was the divinity of the Kedusha of the Torah. The infinity of the Torah, the Kedusha of the Torah, the irrational parts of the Torah. In fact, they said, learn Torah, keep Shabbos even, but what they fought against was the soul, not the body of the Jewish nation. They're like, let's assimilate with you. We want to settle here. We love this nation. We want you to, the body of Judaism, go for it. Even within the mitzvahs, keep the mitzvahs that make sense. And this was the fundamental difference between who they were. They worshiped nature, logic, body, everything that is physical, materialistic, everything. And Judaism, and there's so many parts of Judaism, or a lot of Judaism is in line with that. The beautiful Beit HaMikdash, a lot of the mitzvahs that we do, the culture, Shabbat, the festive, the singing, the food, it all was so in line with everything that they glorify. But then there's an element of Judaism that is irrational, like Truma and Tara. Like this vessel or this jug of oil is pure because of some imaginary, spirit over it, and this one is impure because we moved it, because we removed the seal. Right? This person is pure and now impure. Now they went into this holy body of water. They look exactly the same. The things that you can't see, the things that are intangible, the element of the irrational part of Judaism. So in fact, they said keep Shabbos, but keep it on Sunday, or come to our game, keep it a few hours later. Keep Shabbos is a beautiful idea, but why the fact that you think that you're connected to some divine being that created the world? No, we believe in nature. There's no divine being that created the world. There's nothing greater that created the Torah. The Torah is the works of man. It's a brilliant a beautiful piece of literature and amazing advice on life, but nothing more than that. And so he fought with his entire being against doing things that are irrational. And that's why most of his things were like bris milah, irrational, keeping Shabbos on time, tuma and tara, doing things like defiling the mikvah. And that's why it was so important for them not to break the oil in the menorah. In fact, they wanted us to light the menorah. And they knew that we could light the menorah, but they were like, I want you to light it with impure oil because this is nonsense. This is childish and primitive. Your belief in something greater, that some God told you that this is holy and this is not. Get rid of those childish beliefs. Light the menorah because it's a beautiful golden vessel, but take away the kedusha out of it. And so really, what's understood now is that the reason, going back to the original question, the reason for the war was not a fight for our body. The reason for the war itself was a fight for the spirituality. It was a spiritual war, even though it was fought physically. It was a fighting for the spirituality of Torah and mitzvot. So if you go back to the text now, it's so clear. La'ashkicham Torah secha. They didn't care if we learn Torah, but don't learn it because it's Torah secha, because it's Hashem's Torah. Learn it because it's beautiful, but not because it's from God. It's not. We don't see God. Also, lavir michuke ritzonecha. They didn't even care if we do the mitzvos. Which mitzvos? There's 3 types of mitzvos, right? There's yes, also what? Mishpatim, which are logical mitzvos. Eidut, which are cultural mitzvos that are beautiful to commemorate things. And then chukim, which are the irrational mitzvos. So they said, don't keep the chukim. Keep the parts that are logical, though it's beautiful. The parts that are irrational, get rid of that. And that's why the Al Nisim specifies, lavir mechuke, and even within the chukim, ritzonecha. What is the reason? Sometimes you do a chok because whatever, I'm part of society. No, because it's Ratzon Hashem. And this is really the answer to everything. What we're fighting for in Chanukah is the fact that the reason that we're actually taught that we don't only keep the chukim because Hashem told us, and the rest of the mitzvahs because they make sense. We're meant to keep all of the mitzvahs because they're Ratzon Hashem and not because they understand them. We're supposed to connect with all the mitzvahs. Yes, it might make sense, but the reason I'm doing it is because it's the Ratzon of Hashem. Because I love Hashem. Hashem is created the world. Hashem created me, and this is Hashem's will. And I love Hashem, and I will do His will. And I'm doing it because it's the will of Hashem. That's the true reason that defies everything. The real reason that I actually keep Torah mitzvahs can't be explained. The same way the Jewish existence today can't be explained. It's not logical. And so we're hopefully gonna get really all time to get really deep with that idea today. What the Yevani, and that's the Tuma of the Yevanim, trying to get us to. I'll go into it now. So I was really thinking, like, we don't have the Yevanim today telling us we can't keep rational mitzvot, right? The Yevani, and I heard this a little bit from Rabbi Y.Y. Jacobson, not in his talk on Sunday, but from other talks from a few years ago. And this is something that I was really mulling over. The Yevani is inside of us. There's a Yevani or a Greek inside of us, and that's really the Tuma. I think of like one of the big tumas of today's generation in like Western culture is like it became that we like serve logic. Now, what's the problem with that? Logic is great, but like we so much so that we like look down at somebody who's irrational, somebody who's acting irrationally. We look down at them. We like in ourselves, we might judge them for being irrational because we've come to a place where society today worships things that are logical and rational. And you might ask, what's the problem with that? The problem with that is that it's not essence. And I heard this example from YY. He was speaking to a famous therapist. He said, and he asked the therapist, when do you know that you really got to someone? And he said that as long as a person is sitting in therapy and giving me explanations for everything, I haven't gotten there yet. If I keep asking, but why does that matter? But why is that a problem? But why? And when I get to the point with a client and they can sit in front of me and tears pouring down their face or not and say, it's just who I am. I don't know why. It's just me because it's me. Just because, then when I got to their essence. And that's who you are, who we are at our core. Logic is a part of us. And if we go into Kabbalah, we have Chachma. We think Chachma is the highest, but it's not. We learn in Kabbalah that above the 10 spheres, Chachma is the highest of the spheres. We worship it. But above Chachma, the source of Chachma is Ratzon, which is Keser, the crown, femininity. Ratzon is desire, will. And that's above Chachma. So who you are, Chachma is only a very external layer of you. You have logic, but you can't connect with logic. You are, at your essence, your logic is in fact a coping mechanism. We use logic in today's day and age to protect us. It's our nefesh Bahamis, our animal soul's coping mechanism to protect us when we've been hurt or broken, to protect anyone from accessing my true self, or for me from getting to be vulnerable. It's a protection, and it's helpful sometimes because it protects you, and logic is an amazing tool, and we need logic, and there's so many great great advantages to logic. We don't have to go into that today. We all know how valuable our logic is to make the right decisions, to say the right things, to learn, etc. But if we end there and we say logic is everything, and we just have to, he said an example of like a guy in therapy who like, a couple in therapy, and the husband's like, my wife wants flowers every day, but I don't understand why. Like, give me the logic. It's such a waste of money. I don't get why she wants flowers every week, right, for Shabbat. He's like, so the therapist, explain to me why. And he's like, what do you mean why? Because it's Torah Moshe Sinai. Your wife wants something. It's a desire. There is no reason for a desire. And this is honestly the essence of all Chassidut and Kabbalah, is going back to the level above Chachma, to the level of Ratzon, and saying that everything, all the Torah and mitzvos are Ratzon Hashem. Way deeper than logic. We do them because they come from a place that's beyond logic. It's my essence. Ratzon comes from my essence. And I'm going to share something personal. This is, for me, like a big breakthrough, or something I've been struggling with my entire life. And this year, I finally realized, through a lot of self-reflection, that I like logic a lot, as like everyone, right? We want things that make sense. Explain to me why. I want everything in therapy to explain why it works that way, right? Which is good. Logic is helpful. It helps me process, internalize. But so much so that whenever I have a desire that's irrational, I fight it like it's wrong, especially if it's like a bad desire, like a wrong desire. So like I won't even accept that I could have a desire. If I desire someone to be exclusive, or like have a feeling, or like I want you to like only, not like a friend, I'm like, I only want you to be my friend, right? And it's an irrational desire. Obviously, I don't want you to only, never hang out with other people, but it's somewhere a part of me wants that, and I have to accept that there's parts of me that are defy logic. It's not logical. It's just a desire, and as shameful as it is, being able to accept that there's a part of me that's illogical, irrational, and illogical frees me from it. And I'm like, okay, it's a desire, right? Like I tell my child, you want that, right? Once I accept you want that, then he can choose whether to be free of that want. But accepting your wants and knowing that your wants and just are your core. And that when as much as we hide behind logic and like explain to me why you want that, we're never getting to essence, and we're going to be blocking our neshama and our essence. So our neshama at our core is ratzon. It's just who I am. There's no reason, there's no logic, it's my essence. And logic is that tool that blocks that. And now there's a place for logic, but not in the place of relationship. Like Torah mitzvahs, most of it is logical, but most of our relationship of what our spouse and people we love want is logical. But the real things in life, if you think about it, logic is so powerful, but everything that's important in your life has no logic, in my opinion. That's just my thoughts. Like the reason I married my husband, if I would explain it to logic, that's not why. It's because there was something deeper than logic, just a pull. I felt an attraction that's much deeper than logic. My living with children, it's not logic. Everything that's real in life, my love for my children is way deeper than logic, but we're so afraid of the irrational because of this society, this Yavani society that says to hide behind logic. My relationship with Hashem, myself, my essence is beyond logic, but I try to fit myself into this box of logic. Rabbi Wawa said on Sunday, whoever was there, he said it's like experiencing life with logic is like trying to eat cake with your brain. I love that. You were there? And I was like, wow. And that really resonated with everything. So logic isn't bad, but what really matters in connection with what really matters in life, your neshama, your essence, your people that you love, are deeper than logic. So we have to know that logic is an amazing tool, but then there's so much more beyond that. And going back, that's what the Greeks fought against. They worshipped and they introduced this idea of logic is the end all. And beyond that was something that they fought against. And they said, just serve Torah as long as it's logical, and beyond that, don't do it. And we fought against that. The war was because of that. The war was to fight and that's why it was so important for them to light the menorah, even though they could have lit it with impure oil. They fought to make sure that we're going to light it with pure oil, because that's what this is all about. We're fighting for the infinity. And now we go to the number 8. This is the best part, right? 7, Hashem built the world in nature. The natural world is built in building blocks of 7. 7 days of creation, 7 days of the week, 7 laws of nature, etc. Everything's in cycles of 7. 7 represents the limits of nature, which is where the Greeks saw until. And we believe, and they said, nature is everything. And we were like, yes, but what about who's the one that created nature? The infinite that created all of this nature, who is that? That's who we connect to, the 8 infinity. And so the 8 is the Jewish number, the number of Ein Sof, of our infinity, of our essential infinity. And that's what Chanukah is all about, celebrating the triumph of 8 over 7, which is why we light 8 candles in a menorah and not 7 like the Beit HaMikdash. And why we celebrate Chanukah for 8 days. What? Mm-hmm. Exactly. Like Brit Milah is the 8th because it's an infinite connection to Hashem. It's not logical. Your Brit is your essence connected with God. Exactly. Everything above logic. We learned that Mashiach comes, the harp is going to, there's going to be an 8th note, by the way. Now in music, there's 7 notes. There's going to be an 8th note that comes when Mashiach comes. So it's going to open up the connection to that deeper, infinite dimension. So music will be totally different. And I actually, whatever, my deep brain. So we're going to go back now to answer all the questions. So that's also now why we go to let me just go in a systematic way. Number one, why are we commemorating this miracle? Because that's what the Battle of Hanukkah was about. The triumph of divinity over the Tameh. And if you look at it's Masarta, Giborim Biyad Chalashim, Tameim Biyad Tahorim. Where do we say that in the rest of Alanisim? I think that's in the rest of Alanisim, yeah. V'ata baras continue Alanisim. So we said they wanted to take us out from the chukim, from the irrational part of the ratzon of Hashem, from connecting to Hashem from a place that's beyond logic, from ratzon, because it's Hashem's will, and will is deeper than logic. And you with your mercy, you fought their battles, you avenged them. Oh, now it's cut off. And Tameh, and that's like the essence of it. You put the Tuma in the hands of the Tahor. And that's what what Hanukkah really is at its essence. It's the light prevailing over darkness. It's the Tahor, the purity over the impurity, the eight, the infinity over the finite, over the logic, the above nature over the nature, the Ein Sof, over the limitation. And so that's really going. Let's go back to the questions. So we understand the first miracle, why we're celebrating the Hanukkah, the light of specifically the miracle of the oil, because that's what we're celebrating. Okay, let's take it back to the oil now. The oil represents that no matter how much our enemies want to destroy us and crush us, there's always going to be a jug of oil that they can't touch. That inside every single human being is an element that's untouchable by nature. So we're unbreakable. It's the unbreakable jug of oil is the fifth dimension in every neshama, the Pintel Yid, we call it the spark of Hashem, the Yechida Shebenefesh, the crusade of oil that's at the core of every Jew, that no matter what Aveira he does, even if he converts to whatever religion, his core is untouchable and unbreakable. And that's what that whole story, the deeper idea of that story, looking and defiling the oil. They could defile every part, even a Jew or Yevani could defile every part of us, but we're never going to be able to break that because it's beyond touch. It's infinite, and it's what the number 8 is. 8 is like the infinity sign. It's literally infinite. It's Ein Sof. You can't do anything to affect it. That's why no matter how many nations over the years come and try to break us down, we just exist, infinite in this illogical, irrational way. We're just as a whole, we're an unbreakable jug of oil. Even if they went with their whole army and tried to break everyone, they're not going to be able to, because there's something infinite that's deeper than this world, and it's above this world, and it's at essence, and it's the core of everything, and that's at our core. And so as much as broken as a person feels and disconnected from themselves, and as shattered as a person feels, there's always that jug of oil. And I learned in Chassidut now that the oil contains the fire within it itself, that it's really deep mimer of Chassidut that oil has the potential for fire already inside the oil. And so even the oil inside of you already has the potential to be a flame. And that's what Hanukkah is about. It's about, and we'll go through this at the end, remind me, the system, the 3 steps of my 3 steps of like fighting the darkness in the world, from the mashal, the menorah, and lighting up your oil. And so finding that jug of oil represented that deep yichida core of every single one of us that is unbreakable no matter what, that's always there. And that's why we're celebrating oil constantly. Oily donuts, right? And latkes. Yeah, exactly. Do you know Chassidut speaks about it all the time? That oil rises to the top. Like, it always speaks about that. We have to have another class next week about just the candle and oil and the mashalim. I could just spend days talking about how your neshama is a flame. It's the only thing in this world that's we'll talk about this later, but I'm going to light this flame and we'll show you. But our neshama in Mashal throughout David HaMelech's teachings of Tehillim and Shalom Melech, our neshama is constantly compared to a flame. It's the only thing in nature that, everything in nature is pulled down to gravity, to like the materialistic core of the earth, except the fire. The fire represents the part of us that's pulled upwards, no matter which direction. Look, if I'm turning the flame upside down, the candle, the flame, you'll see in a moment, the flame always pulls upwards. The wick is pointing down, the flame always pulls upwards to its source, yeah.
No spontaneous combustion at all.
What's spontaneous combustion?
Somebody can have rags with oil in it in their attic.
And then it just, right. So it's like it has the potential, that's really cool. There's more mishalim of oil, fine, we'll share a few. Oil is also, fire is the only thing, anything else physical, when you give of it to someone else, it diminishes what you have. You have less, except for fire, spirituality, or neshama. When you give of your love, it increases. I always think, like, how can I love more? And then you love more people, and love just grows. So look, the fire doesn't get smaller, you just get even bigger together when you give fire. So that's another mashal. It always points upward. There's really, we could spend days. No matter what the flame, like the candle looks like, the flame is the same, right? It's there, it's untouchable. And more. Not you.
It's yellow.
What am I doing with these?
Yeah. Okay.
You want me to hold them?
You could put them out if you want. We'll relight it soon because I have to relight it again in a moment. I don't like to. That's, by the way, why we're very careful about not blowing out a flame, because the flame is a neshama. Chabad, we were always taught we now don't blow out a flame because the flame represents a soul. So we just we'll cover it, but we won't blow it with our breath, because breath is like creation. So we'll put it out. No, is that just me? Superstitious?
What are you doing birthdays? Birthday cakes?
We don't blow out birthday candles. We light the candles, and then they sparkle out. Sparklers. Because then you're lighting flame, you're not taking away flame. Whatever, it's not halacha. It's just a Hasidic metaphor. Okay.
Then you avoid all the germs.
Okay, so now we get to the menorah. Because spirituality is represented by the flame, it's the only thing in this world physical that defies the laws of nature. It's our depiction of spirituality in this world. That is why we are celebrating with the lighting of the menorah. We're celebrating the triumph of spirituality over materialism, over darkness, and how light always prevails over darkness, time and time again, no matter what. And that's also, by the way, to looking at the candles. It says Ner Hashem Nishmat Adam. Every Chag we usher in with candles, because that's our spirituality. We usher in Shabbos, Havdalah, every Yom Tov, Chanukah, the Ner Tamid in the shul. Everything's with flames. We're obsessed with fire because fire is our soul. In fact, one of the Chabad Rebbeim said that when you look at the fire, you're looking at your soul. Oh, my other favorite mashal, sorry, we have to light it again, is the flame is always moving. And the movement of the flame is the neshama. You ever see when people daven, or I was listening to Rabbi Wai, I found myself chuckling because it was so inspiring. The chuckling when you daven, or the movement when you sing a nigun or a song, is because your soul, the flame is dancing. Why is it moving? Scientifically, because I'm not a scientist, but I've heard, is that it's dancing because it's trying to leave the wick and go back up to its source, because the source of fire is somewhere under the moon. It's trying to leave and escape from the pulls of the wick. And so that's why it's moving. So when your neshama is activated in a holy Torah talk, or you're singing a nigun, or you're davening, you're shuckling because your soul is moving and it's trying to get out of your body. And whenever having a spiritual experience, the more spiritual it is, the more you're moving, because your neshama is moving and dancing. And so the Rebbe Rashab said, when you gaze at the candle, you're gazing at your own neshama, and what you're seeing is a reflection of your soul, and it activates your neshama. So gazing, 3 steps, fine, we'll go to this. 3 steps to becoming a menorah, and when you have a world full of darkness. Step 1 is finding and connecting with your invincible jug of oil inside your neshama. Finding it in another person, in yourself. It's just knowing that it's there, connecting with it, talking with it, removing logic, and being able to be present with your deepest desire and love for Hashem, with being able to take away logic and say, I'm doing everything because Hashem said, right? So just finding and knowing that in you and in everyone around you, and anyone who seems like they're fully dark, to find and recognize their divinity, their Ein Sof, their oil inside of their neshama. Step 2 is to activate that neshama from a potential of oil to be a fire by gazing at it. This is something Rabbi Wai said at the Q&A at the end. He said about a question about parenting. I forget what the question was, but the answer was really beautiful. He said about children, he says, Ve'ein lanu, the menorah, everyone's a flame, and it says about the flames, Ve'ein lanu reshut lishtamesh behen. We have no permission to use them. Our children, he said, are not created to give us nachas. And that was like life-changing for me. It was, our children are not created for our benefit. What do we do? What do we say? Like, I sometimes want my son to say Dvar Torah. I'm like bribing him to say Dvar Torah for me, because it makes me feel like I did a good job as a parent, right? That's not what our children are for. We have no permission to use them, but to see them alone. We're here to see and witness our children's beauty and their infinity. We're here to look at their flame. What are we there to? So go back to the mashal. We only look at the flames. By the way, this halacha comes from, you're not allowed to use the candles to read for anything. You're not allowed to use you can't read by the candlelight of the menorah, because the point of it is not to give you benefit, only to be a light and to activate your neshama, to look at it and activate your neshama. And that's our children. We don't use them for our benefit. They're not here to make us happy and to give us joy. They're here so that we can gaze at their soul, and by knowing and seeing their infinity, they'll know how great they are because someone witnessed their greatness, and they'll know how special they are. Rabbi Why said that he thinks that anyone who's an amazing, great person today is because somebody when they were younger witnessed their greatness. And sometimes like it's easy when a little child, you look at them, you're like, whoa, like this is just infinity, pure, like Hashem. And then they get older and difficult. He's like, it hasn't changed. And our job is that no matter what they're doing on the outside, right? Rather than saying, don't dress like that, change, it's to see way beyond that, to see into their flame and to say, you are still beautiful, precious, and infinite part of Hashem, no matter what Esav, and even if you look on the outside completely like Esav, and your deeds are like Esav, and you act like Esav, and you speak the worst things in the world, I could see deep down, and I see your infinite flame. I see that you are a piece of Hashem, and you're Chelek Eloka, and when we see that, and we look at them, and you ever like look at your like little child, or any little child with eyes shining, and they look at you and they just see you delighting in them. If we can look at all of our children, no matter, especially the ones who are suffering or in challenge, if we can look at them with this huge light, and they say, what are you looking at? And you're just like, at your great, your infinite, your greatness. I like to tell my kids, I'm so lucky that Hashem chose me to be your mommy. I love to tell them that. My friend once said that to her child, and I say it all the time. I can't believe Hashem chose me to be your mommy. You're such a beautiful neshama. You are so special. I just look at you and smile. So if they can see reflected in our eyes without even words, how reflected their beauty and their fire that they are and the flame that they are, especially when they're going through so much on the outside, that I still see that you are a piece of Hashem and you are precious and you are infinite and your greatness is untouchable, then they can see themselves that way. And then they can see that even if I'm Esav on the outside, a kol Yaakov is still there. That's who I am on the inside. All that's a facade. It's like Tamar last week. We said dressing up like a Zona, but she wasn't really, right? It was that mashal. So that is the seeing. So that's the second step. So one is, number two is gazing at it, seeing yourself, looking at the candle and saying, I am an infinite piece of Hashem. No matter what mistakes I made and no matter what bad choices I made, nothing can affect that core light that I am inside. Nothing touches it, right? No matter what, the candle could be deformed, but the flame is pure and retains its pure no matter how deformed the candle is. And so that's number two. And number three, we're going to get to soon. Okay.
I feel like also, when you see, they say when you see the good in other people, you see the good in you.
Yeah.
It's like mamash,
literally.
Maybe reflects. So
I'm going to end off with the craziest story I ever heard about that, what you said. Okay, now we're going to Hillel and Shammai. So that's why we light the menorah at night, by the way. Why? The Gemara says, the words of the Gemara are, even though they lit the menorah during the Beis Mikdash, doesn't say that. Ad shetichla regel min hashuk v'ad kama, until when? Until there's no one left in the shuk. And the Gemara says, until when? Amar Rava bar Chana. Amar Rabbi Yochanan ad zakalia ragle getar mudai. Until the traffic of the low lives, the tam mudari, I don't have the lowest bums, cease. Which is the answer. Why are we lighting the menorah at night? Because the whole reason we're celebrating Chanukah is to show that it's to bring light into the darkest places. It's to show the triumph of light no matter how great the dark is. And so we're specifically lighting the menorah in the darkest places to shine that light from the light into the dark. And that's why we have to light it at night, even though in the Beis Mikdash they light it at day, because we're not lighting to remember that they light in the Beis Mikdash. We're lighting to remember the miracle that light triumphs over darkness. That even if darkness seems quantitatively tremendously more, it doesn't matter because we're talking about infinity. So yes, that's the secret of our survival. Right now, it makes our enemies are infinitely quantitatively larger than us, and the reason that we're still here is because we are infinity. So we come from Ein Sof, we come from infinity, we come from Nitzchiyut, from forever. And so that's the power of lighting one candle in the dark. That a little bit of light, we don't have to be scared of the overwhelming darkness, because our light is infinite, and our light has the power to banish so much darkness. And so that's how we light at night. So I think we answered all the questions. Yeah? No, we're not. This is not even the answer yet, guys. This was now the answer is going to be much shorter. Why it was 7 days? Why we celebrate 8 days and not 7? If the miracle was 7 days, is because we're celebrating the miracle of the infinity of 8. Okay. Okay, now we're getting to the part of Hillel and Shammai. Hillel and Shammai both understood that what we're dealing with on Hanukkah is how to win the battle of overwhelming darkness, which we're facing right now again, right? I heard a comedian say there's been an uptick in anti-Semitism lately for the last 3,000 years. You saw that? I was cracking up. So we have an uptick in darkness lately. It was so good. And so they deferred. So Hillel and Shammai both understood this that Hanukkah is about bringing light to the darkness, but they had two different approaches and what is the best way to dispel darkness. What is the best way to combat darkness? We're going to start with Shammai. Shammai said, Keneged Parei HaChag. What were the Parei HaChag? Why did we start with 8 in the times of we have to understand why they started with 8 and then diminish if we never, the question there is really big. If we always add in Kedusha, why would we bring 8 Karbano and then lessen? That makes no sense. And the reason then is that there was 70 bulls brought in total to represent the 70 nations of the world, and each day we brought less to diminish the power of the evil, of the Tuma, represented by the 70 nations. And so we're diminishing their power. So Shammai said like this, the reason on the first day you need the most light is because when you're battling darkness, the first day is the hardest. If you have an addiction or you're dealing with a really big depression, the first day of going to therapy, right? The first therapy is going to be your whole history, everything. It's going to be the hardest. And each time, every day, it's going to get easier and easier. You're going to need less light to fight the darkness. It makes so much sense, right? If you're battling an addiction and stopping cold turkey in addiction to something, the first day you're going to need the most light. And he's like, don't worry, it gets easier. Each day you're going to need less light to battle the darkness, right? Hillel, and that is like Freudian psychology. When you're uprooting something from its source, right? And like psychotherapy is like when you want to deal with darkness, the best way is to uproot it from its source, to get to the source of the darkness and to uproot it from its evil. Like, why am I like this? Going into my core, my history, my generational trauma, right? Getting to the core of my issues and uprooting it from its core. And that takes a lot of power the first day. And what did Hillel say to that? Hillel said, Shammai, you're right. That is the best way to uproot it, because if you don't uproot it from its core, it's going to keep growing, right? It's like a root. You want to uproot evil from its darkness, from its core. You want to get to the core of darkness and uproot it and have the most light the first day. But he says, what's like that there's too much darkness, Shammai. He says, you're Shammai, you come from the time, we're in the Beis Hamikdash times, right? The times of light from the Beis Hamikdash era. You've Shammai, but the source of Shammai we learn comes from the left side of the tree of life, so that's why he always was the Gvura. Hillel comes from the right side of the tree of life, so he was always with speaking with Chesed. So Shammai actually learned that the Gvura branch of the tree of life actually is more powerful. It's like the Asap energy, more powerful energy. He says that is the better way to uproot evil, but we don't have the energy. There's so much darkness that we'll be stuck in that cycle. It'll be an endless cycle. We'll never get out of it. We'll be there forever because there's not enough light. There's so much darkness. We'll just never end if we start to engage and fight the darkness. And so it's like sitting in therapy. It's like someone was telling me recently, they were doing like therapy and they're talking about their past, but they're like, it's been like 3 years and they're still stuck in like the past. And then in like the 1970s, I think came like new age therapy, which is like then was called solution-focused therapy, which is like, it's good to get into your past and to uproot things from its source and figure out what generation and why I am the way that I am. However, we could stay there forever. So I remember one of my therapists said she does a dynamic psychotherapy, which is like a combination. We go a little bit into why you're there, but mostly new age therapy, which is like CBT, NLP, all the new age, they're like, okay, I'm sure there's really good reasons why you are that way, but if we try and uproot all of that, will be there forever because there's so much. We'll spend years in therapy talking about every childhood thing that happened to you, and you're still going to be depressed and anxious and have all the issues that you have. Let's start with now. And that was Hillel's approach. And Hillel said, we'll go to this solution-focused therapy. He says, okay, so what is your issue? Let's, like CBT, I'm a therapist, but from what I understand, it's like going to the core belief of what it is that's making you feel triggered, what's making you acting that way, what's making you anxious or depressed. For example, for many women, a core belief that's there for many women is that if I don't help people and I'm not perfect, I'm not doing for everyone, no one's gonna love me. I'm not worthy of love unless I'm always doing for others, right? So we challenge that. Is that true? Do you love people? Is there people that you love? So we go to that core belief. So rather than going into why I am the way that I am because my mother was that way, my grandmother, and I didn't get enough love as a child, which is important, but it's gonna take forever and then you're still gonna be miserable. Instead, it's like, okay, so let's challenge that core belief. If your core belief is that you are not worthy of love unless you please everyone around you, which is, I'm only bringing it up because it's one of the most common core beliefs for women. So we challenge that belief. We say, ask yourself, is that true? Am I not lovable if I'm not worthy? Are there other people that are not always doing for other people and are they worthy of love? And then you challenge that belief, and then you are now in a much faster, direct way. One of the CBT things we do, we go to the to moving forward. So it's solution-focused therapy. It's like NLP. Let's break the trigger response. Let's break the brain patterns. Let's try to create a new brain pattern so now I can have a much more productive life, right? Rather than being stuck in the past. And so Hillel's approach was Shammai. Your approach is the right way. And when Mashiach comes, we're going to go back to Shammai and Hillel. So your approach has validity to it, and it's probably the better way of uprooting darkness. However, there is so much darkness in the world right now that if we would get stuck, for example, my mashal is like answering every anti-Semite online and social media, we will never, ever breathe, right? It's never ending. We can't answer. So what does Hillel say to do instead? He says, instead, light one candle today. Just light one. I have so much darkness in my life. Just shine a little brighter. Don't engage with the darkness at all. Don't even go there. It's a bottomless pit. When Mashiach comes, we'll have more light. We'll be able to go to the darkness. What did you get here? Oh my gosh. Hi. When Mashiach comes, we'll be able to have the power to uproot things from its core. And we'll do both ways. But now, let's focus on what's one act of light I can do to increase today. So instead of fighting every anti-Semite, I remember like at the beginning of the war, I was literally like messaging celebrities. I thought they're going to listen to me, to like lots of famous celebrities, to like use your platform. I'm like, you should really use your platform to fight anti-Semitism. It's not going to help, right? It's endless. I mean, and I was exhausted and depressed and drained from opening social media. And now, like my brother-in-law is a Chabad sheikh on campus. His motto, the Rebbe actually said this when there's like rallies, like this was then, it wasn't pro-Palestine, I don't know what it was then. He says instead of going and answering them and debating with them, he's like, just go put on tefillin, go be nice, spread light, look for Jews and be warm to them. My brother-in-law, I hope he doesn't mind me saying this, and he was not really, he's in secular, he went to UCLA, he hasn't put on tefillin for years, but he got this message when they were protesting and literally like surrounding him so he couldn't go into campus, he went and just put on tefillin in front of them. I'm like, wow, it took this to get you to put on tefillin. I'm not, but it was so beautiful. He understood that we don't need to fight you, we don't need to answer you, we just need to shine brighter. And that's what Ma'at or Dochar b'choshech means. Shlomo Melech says, Yesh Yisron la'or min choshech. There's an advantage to light. Well, that's a different topic. But he says, Ma'at or Dochar b'choshech. There's a little bit of light dispels a lot of darkness. We think that the darkness is so overwhelming. How am I ever going to combat it? And if you engage with the darkness, that's true. If you try and make reason and logic and go into the reasons of the darkness, yes, it's going to be endless. But if you don't engage with the darkness and just realize that if you go to the first pasuk, second pasuk in the Torah, v'aretz haisa tohu v'vohu, v'choshech al pnei tehom. Darkness was there. Darkness wasn't created. It just was there. And then the next pasuk says, v'yomer Hashem v'yihi'ar. Darkness is not even a creation. It's there when it's in that void. There was a void of tohu, of chaos, and there was darkness there. But as soon as v'yihi'ar, Hashem said v'yihi'ar, the darkness disappears. Light is a creation. Light is powerful. And that is why, with my candle mashal, all you need is, I remember last year at Siftach when we lit with the Wisers, which we're going to light again tomorrow night, the lights were closed, the string lights were closed. So it was really, really dark. And then they lit the menorah, and it was the fifth night of Hanukkah, and literally the whole place was lit up. This entire huge shetach of darkness was lit up by a menorah. And so the quantity, again, because our Kedusha comes from infinity, it's not proportionate, it's not logical. It's not like, well, if I have that much darkness, I'm going to need that much light. It's not true. And that's what Hillel says. Just light one candle on your menorah. And I'm going to share with you, the story I usually share about this is the one where there was a woman who was selfish, and she wrote to the Rebbe how selfish she is, and she can't get over it, and she has no friends. And the Rebbe told her, not like read this book about your midos, work on your selflessness, learn this. He said tomorrow, she was in college, when you're in the cafeteria and you go get yourself lunch, bring an extra spoon for someone else. That's it. And she was like, what? How's that gonna help me? My whole life I've been working in therapy on my selfishness and my ego. And she's like, okay, I'll try it. And she's like, she went and brought a spoon to someone, and it made her feel so good. And she's like, and the next day brought everyone spoons. And then I became a less selfless person. It's like, stop getting so stuck in the whys and in the understanding the darkness, and just add a candle and the darkness will just go away. It's like going back, my brother-in-law on campus, whenever he sees like rallies or Jews anywhere, we just shine brighter. He takes a selfie and he goes, Am Yisrael Chai, we are so proud to be Jews. Just shine brighter. When we shine brighter, our enemies have nowhere to be, right? And they're there in the absence of our brightness. And when we are not afraid and we shine our light brighter, when we put on tefillin prouder, when we do more mitzvot and add more light, then the darkness just has no more space. Because when there's light, the darkness just has nowhere to be. It disappears on its own. I think this was a mashal given between Musar and Chassidut, that it was saying that we want to get this guy to take off his coat for whatever reason, right? His coat is like his armor, his defense mechanisms. So Musar sends winds to force him to take it off, like shed your connections. And Chassidut says shine a make the sun really bright and warm so that you want to take off your coat. Just make it so warm that they'll take off their defenses. Just shine brighter so that they'll want to not throw winds at them and blow them. That's like the difference between battling and just shining bright so that the darkness dissipates on its own. So I'll share with you the other story. My husband shared this story with me. It was so beautiful. There was a Jew in England, not a Chabad, an elderly Jew who would come with tons of candy every Shabbos. And no one really understood why, but he always gave out tons of candy to the children. And so finally someone said, what's your deal? What's your story? And he said that he's a Holocaust survivor. He lost his parents, his children, and his wife. He had a loving family. He loved them. He lost everyone in the Holocaust. And he was completely broken. He didn't want to live. He was depressed. He couldn't do anything. And he someone suggested him to write to the Rebbetzin Rebbe. So he either visited or wrote to the Rebbetzin Rebbe. And the Rebbe told him something really beautiful. I hope I remember it correctly. He said that your pain is because of how it's actually coming from your love. Your sadness and your depression are coming from love because you have so much love for your family, but has nowhere to go, so you're channeling it into depression and pain and anger. But really, it's just an amount of love, and you need an outlet for your love. So he said to bring, and so I suggest to you to bring candy. I missed the part, but he said bring candy to shul and give it out so you can have expression for your love. And so he listened. He took up one candy. It was really, really hard for him because he was so empty and broken. He had nothing to give to anybody. He said, I can't even think about moving on. It's been years. And so that week he brought a candy to shul, but he said he couldn't get himself to give it to any child. He was just so empty and broken. He's like, I couldn't get myself to give any love to anybody. I had nothing to give. And then a little child went over to him and said, do you have any candy? And he gave him that candy, and he said, if the floods burst open, and he finally, all that love came pouring out. And so from then on, he was able to channel that light. And so all it started with is that's the mashal of lighting one candle. There's so much darkness in the world. And we think how can I combat all this darkness? How can I heal from that darkness that he went through? You don't have to think about how you're going to be better or how it's going to look. And the end of the story is that this man, from there, he ended up starting a new family and having a lot of love and having a new wife and children after that story, from that flood. And all it took is adding one act of kindness. So a lot of times you think I'm so broken, I need to fill myself. But really, at the candle, you just need to light yourself outwards. You're I'm so dark, how am I going to light others? That is the answer. When you light up someone else, your light shines brighter when you're activated. I blanked out on where I'm going. So, what was I saying before that? Yeah, it's a very, very touching story. Oh, there's another. So this, in our lives, I remember when I had very severe postpartum depression. I had depression for many, many years. I was always a happy person. After my first son, I couldn't get out of bed in the morning. And it was hard because you're thinking how do I get better? I can see myself better, but I can't get better. It's so much. And this mashal of Hillel is you don't have to think about being better yet. You just have to think about waking up tomorrow morning, or one thing I could do tomorrow to make me feel better, to make me feel a little bit better. I can call one person. And so I remember a friend who was a Chabad shlucha, we were a group of Chabad shluchas who struggle with mental health, and she said that her goal, and this was so validating to me, she said, my goal for my life right now is every day to try and be dressed by 4 p.m. when my kids come home. That's it. That's her one candle. And I'm wow, that's so validating because I'm trying to shine my whole menorah again and I can't. And Hillel's if you try to light your whole menorah, you're going to fail because it's too much, right? Just start with one act. Give one spoon to one person. Give one candy to one person and let that grow. And that's the third step in the menorah, that we light one. So let's say it's one day getting up in the morning, and the next day it's let me try and open the window and get fresh air before 4 p.m. And let me try and call someone the next day. And every day adding one candle until suddenly you don't realize it and the whole menorah is ablaze. And you're on fire, and then you're lighting up, and then you're putting the menorah by the window, and you're lighting up for the whole world. And you're lighting up these giant menorahs for everybody. So the steps, this was the third step. The first step is finding that Pintel Yid, the indestructible Ein Sof inside of you and everyone. Then it's activating it. And the way we activate it, we're going to talk about in a moment. Fine, I'll talk about it now. The activating it, I didn't speak so much. The way you activate your flame is one, looking at it, looking at a fire and seeing your infinity, seeing your flame of yours and your children and everyone around you, looking at every Jew the way that Tzaddikim and the Rebbe would look at every Jew, like they're an infinite piece of Hashem. Looking at everyone that way, with those eyes of infinity. And the other way to activate your flame is, like Hillel says, doing one tiny action, not focusing on engaging in the darkness, but doing an action. And that is the mashal, this really deep mashal of a flame. That's the flame, we said, is the neshama. And the wick, or the candle, thank you. The candle is our body. So our body is like the wick. It's the physical. and the flame is our neshama. And our struggles come from, they're both pulled in different directions. They're always, what keeps them together? They're two opposites. Our neshama wants to be one with Hashem. Our body wants materialistic things, and we have this constant battle between them. Let's struggle, the flame dancing and moving. And the only way to keep a flame and a candle connected, or the flame and the wick connected and lit up and not detaching, is by making sure there's oil. When the oil runs out, if you have an oil, the oil runs out and connect anymore. The candle, by the way, has to melt first to become, you have to keep the match there long enough for the wax to melt into oil, and only then can it light. Only if there's oil, and oil is a mashal for Torah mitzvot. If we have Torah mitzvot, without Torah mitzvot, it's really hard. Our neshama is fighting. Our neshama is godly. Our body wants physical things, and they're battling. And we're constantly feeling this tension in our lives, this struggle with who I am in my core, and I'm battling two parts of myself. But when I do Torah mitzvah, I said that the Rebbe would often answer people with who would ask him these philosophical questions about believing in God, and he would tell them, just light Shabbos candles or put on tefillin. And they're like, how does that answer? And he's like, you'll see, right? That is it. When you light your neshama, suddenly there's less tension and struggle, because when you have enough oil, when you feel that tension in your life, it might be that you're just missing oil to bridge the gap to allow the flame to stay and melt and light up your body. So your body can't be lit up with your neshama unless there's a physical mitzvah. And the reason for that, Hasidically and Kabbalistically, is that our neshama comes from a more limited place than the mitzvot. The neshama still has an ego and a sense of self, and that battles the infinity of the flame. So they're fighting. But the mitzvot come from total godliness, from bittul, from total complete bittul, like tvila, complete subservience, and how do you say bittul in English? Nullification and complete godliness with no ego. And so when you bring a mitzvah on yourself and you're doing it specifically because it's Ratzon Hashem, right? But you're doing a mitzvah and you're doing just because Hashem said to light candles, so I'm lighting a Shabbos candle. Hashem said to put on plain filling. Suddenly your ego melts and there's less friction between your neshama and your body, and they could fuse together and light up together, and you don't have that tension as much as long as you keep pouring oil. So another way to activate your light, to keep your flame lit, is to make sure that you look. And it says, by the way, a chacham eina barosho. A chacham always is looking at his oil. And that does a whole chapter of Tanya that speaks about when you feel that tension, you're always making sure, do I have enough Torah and mitzvos to allow my body to be lit up with my soul? Is there enough oil? Literally, think of it. My body is the wick. My neshama is my soul. If I'm feeling that pull, that tug, that friction in my life, that even the questions, the Rebbe's like, just do a mitzvah and that friction will go away. Everything will just become clear when your neshama is lit up. You do a mitzvah, your neshama becomes, and your body become lit up with that kedusha. There's less of that when you're bringing a mitzvah that comes from way higher, from Ratzon Elyon, higher than Chachma, higher than your actual neshama, and it's allowing you to access infinity. When you do a mitzvah, you're connecting to the 8. You're connecting to the Ratzon, because mitzvahs come from 8, which is beyond logic. Mitzvahs are literally Ratzon Hashem. It's Hashem's will. The mitzvahs we do are the 613 things Hashem desires for us to do just because there is will. When we connect to Hashem's will, which is infinite, that ego melts, and our ego that doesn't allow for my neshama to penetrate my body melts away, and it becomes quieter a little bit, and we can now hear and we can now be aflame. I forgot a lot of things. I didn't mention a lot of things. I think we're going to end. Oh, it's been a while. I think we're going to end here. Is there anything I didn't? Oh, I'll end up with this story. The first Hanukkah. We'll see if I actually end here. But we'll end with this story that the very first Hanukkah, earlier we said that the Hanukkah celebrates the triumph of light over dark. We learn that, and the Gemara tells us that the Chagim are cyclical. It's not that because we lit the menorah and found that jug of oil that now we celebrate the triumph of light over darkness. This era, it's this time of Kislev, and specifically the Hanukkah time, this soul is ingrained with this energy of light prevailing over darkness from the beginning of creation. And so that is why the Hanukkah story happened now. So what happened in the beginning of creation? And that's how all Chagim are. Freedom, Pesach, we celebrate freedom not because we left Mitzrayim. We left Mitzrayim because from the beginning of creation, Nisan was a month of the energy of freedom. So the energy of light over darkness is beyond Hanukkah. It's beyond the story or the history of Hanukkah. It's permeated in the fabric of this block of time, is this energy of being able to have our light shine over the mount of dark, the copious darkness in the world. And this comes from the very first year of creation. We learn, the Gemara tells us, I think I brought this for you, L'tana Rabbanan, Lefisha Ra Adam Arishon. Why do we keep Hanukkah? Adam, the first year. Right? The days are getting the days are getting shorter and shorter. Amar oili shema b'shvil shesarachti arlam chashach ba'adi. Because I brought darkness to the world, he said, because I sinned, the world is becoming dark around me, and we're having a, what's the word? apocalypse. He said the world is ending. It's going to get shorter and shorter and shorter until there's no more days and we all die. So Adam was sure that the world is ending because the days were getting shorter and shorter, and that happens every year during Kislev. And then what happened? So he and Chava sat and fasted for 8 days about the world ending and darkness taking over light, which is a metaphor for us. The world seems to be getting darker and darker, and we're mourning and we're getting afraid. And then what happened suddenly? In Kislev, it just happened last week, the days start getting longer. He saw the days getting longer, and he said, he sat 8 days in fasting. Kevan Shrat Kufas Teves. Teves starts coming, the end of Hanukkah, right from the 5th day and on, by the way, because the 5th light of Hanukkah we celebrate because it's when the light of menorah is more than the amount of, that's like a Chabad thing that we always do, the 5th days of, anyways. He saw that the days are getting longer. Oh, it wasn't my sins, it's just how the world works. The days get shorter, the days get longer. And he made Shmona V'asa, this is the Gemara says, V'asa Shmona Yamim Tovim L'shana Ha'acheres. He celebrated for 8 days, for the 8 days that he mourned, Asa'an, and he made this chag for 8 days. Him and Chava celebrated the miracle of lights for 8 days. So for 8 days after the lights started getting longer in Teves, the beginning of Teves, him and Chava celebrated around this time, 8 days of celebrating the triumph of the light, no matter how dark things get. And it feels like the world is ending, and it might feel like in our lives, like the darkness is so much, we can celebrate that the light will always come back, and that light will always prevail over darkness, because that's how it's created. That's how Hashem made the world, that Tara triumphs over Tuma and light triumphs over darkness. I bless all of us to see your flame, to look at yourself then see the infinity that you have, to be able to see those around you with their infinity, to feel the fire of your flame, and to be able to add one light at a time until your entire menorah is ablaze, and we can now combat all the darkness and bring Mashiach and celebrate Hanukkah this year, back with all the hostages, the real light of the Beit HaMikdash, with the 7-branch menorah, with the coming of Mashiach, and with doing it Shammai's way. Thank you for joining. If you like this, share with your friends. Feel free to sponsor a shiur, and see you next week.